Bling blong, everyone. Our new podcast miniseries, Talking Mission Hill, is now exclusively on Patreon.
Put on your spicy pants every Friday with a new podcast covering each episode of the cult series from Simpsons legends Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein.
$5 subscribers at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons can hear every episode, plus all of our previous miniseries about Futurama, King of the Hill, and The Critic.
So don't be a Beardsley. Sign up for Talking Mission Hill today.
Cartoons from present in the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, the podcast that's full of sex and violence. I'm your host, party invitation snubber, Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today?
Hey, it's Henry Gilbert, and I'm still working on my Troa Quatre/fic.
Who isn't, and who do we have on the line?
Lightning Count Cat Bailey.
And today's episode is the Mobile Suit Gundam Wing episode, The Shooting Star She Saw.
One more to go. He blew away 2 Aries with just one shot. Not too shabby.
It was pretty funny. So this episode aired April 7th, 1995 in Japan and March 6th, 2000 on the Toonami channel.
Mm-hmm. The
Toonami block,
yes,
rather.
On Cartoon Network. Yeah, so, this was not a viewer pick. I had picked this one because, it's 25th anniversary in Japan, 20th anniversary on the U.S. for the series. And I thought it'd be fun to go to the, it's not my favorite Gundam show, but it is a lot of people's favorite Gundam show. And it's one that I do have affection for. And of course, as I was considering that, I was like, we can't do a Gundam podcast without Cat Bailey as our guest.
Of course.
Yeah, hi. I actually bullied Henry into doing this because I suggested to him over DM that it's Gundam Wing's 20th anniversary, and I think I got the wheels in his head turning.
It's a good recommendation. People love this one. I think it probably had the most Gundam penetration in America, period, just because of where it landed.
Yeah.
Oh, by far. And it's definitely the most anime out of all of them. So it has a crossover audience that a lot of other Gundam shows simply do not.
And just to prevent this podcast from being 4 hours long, we must strictly embargo chat. I'm saying this to me and Kat. Embargo chat that is not to do with Gundam Wing specifically in this podcast.
I have the emergency
I promise
call.
to behave myself.
My thumb is over the emergency call button on my iPhone. I will call the police if we go too far off topic.
I guess our histories with it. I did really enjoy the show. As I've bragged before, I was actually watching regular classic UC Century Gundam a year before Gundam Wing premiered in the US, so I was one of the very few people enjoying official real Gundam before Gundam Wing came out. But when this started airing and it came out on VHS before that, I did like it. I was already enough of a snob to be like, I like the original better, but I did really enjoy it and watched every single episode on Toonami, every broadcast for the 2.5 months it lasted. Kat, what was your first viewing of Gundam Wing?
It was the first time I ever discovered Gundam, actually.
Oh.
Not because I watched it on Toonami or whatever. I actually didn't have cable when I was in high school, or I didn't have Cartoon Network on my cable package when I was in high school, so I missed it. But when I was living in Japan, I was playing a little game called Super Robot Wars, and I was like, wow, what are these Gundams? They look so cool. I love the designs, and it was the Sandrock and the Death Scythe. So I decided that I wanted to watch Gundam Wing, but I didn't realize that those were from Gundam Wing, so I downloaded Gundam Seed instead. And I was very confused for a while about where the heck the Death Scythe was. But after I really enjoyed Seed, and ultimately that made me want to watch Wing, and it was very different, I think, from Seed, and it was definitely a roller coaster ride for sure. So many intertwining plots and kind of bonkers conqueror's revelations and betrayal after betrayal after betrayal after betrayal. And I still have a soft spot for it to this day, mostly because of its really over the top soundtrack and its kind of memorable character design, so unlike so much of what you would find in Gundam. And I really enjoy the mech designs in particular. I have a lot of fondness for the Endless Waltz versions as well, in particular.
Well, Bob, did you watch this in the day?
I actually didn't because it still happens today, but usually media that has things that appeal to women is derided more than media that has things in it that appeal to men. So I was super into anime at this point. I was going to conventions and reviewing it professionally in quotes. And this show was like largely derided because of those qualities, because of the fangirls who liked it. So I never watched it. And my one most memorable encounter with this was one of the most annoying people in my anime club was this person who really wanted to show us Endless Waltz, the movie, and nobody wanted to see it, so she cried. It was like a full-on like tantrum cry. But she was one of the most annoying people I've ever known, and she was one of those anime club people that would shout out things in Japanese. She was a white lady, like "Nani?" like that, and like yelling "Konnichiwa" people when they come in really loud and embarrassing. Wearing chopsticks in her hair. I hope she's moved on, but that person gave me a bad taste in my mouth for this show. But I watched it and I was like, oh, this is stupid, and I love it. It's the silliest thing, and it's the '90s thing. I love it.
It's wonderfully silly, isn't it? I think that's why it's fun to go back to a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's a wacky 90s ass anime, which is fun to go back to. And also, like, when you talk about how complicated it is, I forgot until I was like, I watched it all the way through at least once, and would watch it some as through the rest of 2000 with reruns. But when I was revisiting it for this and watched, videos that explain the plot thread, I was like, oh my, like 8 seasons worth of things happen in these 49 episodes.
I think one season's worth of things happened in this first episode.
Kind of, yeah. It's so packed with detail and so full of twists and turns. Like it's part of the ridiculousness of it too. Of just like you just talk about the things that happen to say just a random character like Wu Fei. You're just like, wow, his entire deal is crazy when you chart it out on a graph.
Yeah, the status quo changes like 5 times in the show, and it's one of those shows where one of the characters has a grand master plan that they've been enacting that has about 1 billion moving parts, and it's so ridiculous that when you think about it, you're like, okay, this makes no dang sense, but whatever, I'm just gonna roll with it.
And yeah, you're right about the fangirlishness of it. Like that's how I heard of Gundam. I knew Gundam Wing as a thing for years because you'd see the wall scrolls at comic conventions all across the U.S. when I'd go to them, and I knew it as a thing there. And of course, I think it was probably the first time I was introduced to yaoi works.
I think so for me too,
because I mean this show is aimed more at women, and so the boys are much more interesting than the girls, at least in I think sexually to some viewers in anyway. And that led to a lot of different pairings of just like, oh, which of the boys would you put together in this? And a lot of, I think probably a lot of virgins imagining what sex between two men works like, which would probably be very funny now. But of course, all these characters are underage, so I would not actually engage with this slash fic now. But it felt different when I was 17.
If they say they're in college, it's legal.
Yeah.
Just put in a dialogue bubble about that.
My college, that looks exactly like a Japanese high school, but it's college.
Well, it was from what I'm able to gather, it was designed specifically in that way because Gundam by that point was getting pretty stale. It had been around for more than a decade, or like 20 years at that point, or something like that. And mecha anime in general was pretty stale. So Bandai was pretty desperate to expand its audience, and so they pretty explicitly geared Gundam Wing toward women and kind of designed it with the intention of fostering fan fiction and that kind of thing. Like people will point out that every one of the boys in that show has a corresponding female equivalent, and you're supposed to mix and match them between one another, or just have the boys kiss.
Yeah, just cut out the middleman and put them with the two boys together instead of the girl that's exactly like the boy.
I was trying to see if Katra and Troa are like an actual canon pairing, because I think I've seen in an interview somewhere that they're like, oh yeah, Katra and Troa, they're totally together. Like, so I'm like, I wouldn't be shocked.
they're very close in the show.
Best friends.
They're the best of friends. Well, yeah, I guess why don't we get into the history of Gundam Wing? Kat, you did touch on that, but in case you didn't listen to our previous Gundam episode, the Cliff Notes version is Gundam Mobile Suit Gundam premiered 1979, and it elevated the genre of mecha shows in a way that had never been done before in anime. And the 80s were full of new Gundam series that continued on the Universal Century timeline, which was the only timeline of Gundam shows, and they were all overseen by the series creator Yoshiyuki Tomino. And let's cut now to 1993, 14 years into the Gundam franchise. Popularity is starting to flag. Tomino oversaw stories like F91 and Victory that were not as popular. And around the same time in 1993, Bandai, the manufacturers of a ton of Gundam model kits, they then merge and take over Sunrise, the studio that made Gundam content. And so Bandai had a lot more power over Gundam as a franchise, like with the stories they told starting in 1993. And as the story goes, Tomino was not very happy about his new bosses as Victory was beginning. And once that show was over, he left the company for a time. And so Gundam was without a mastermind for the first time in 15 years of its existence.
So they decided to make a kung fu show.
Yeah, so they, in a very wild way, they decide. I found several interviews with folks who worked on Wing, and the sense at the time was just this, even with Tomino gone, such respect to him that, like, they didn't want to continue the UC Century. That was his stories. They didn't want to touch on these things. And so the first one was Mobile Fighter G Gundam, which is just a martial arts combat tournament show, which that's worth its own what a cartoon. But the important thing to note is that it's the first alternate timeline story they did in Gundam, and that would set the tone of kind of leaving the UC untouched for a little bit while Tomino wasn't there to work on it. And Fighter G was a modest success. It had higher ratings in Japan than Victory did. But then in 1995, Bandai and Sunrise were looking for an even more ambitious Gundam series that would deal with the themes and archetypes of classic UC Gundam timeline stuff, but with a fresher 90s feel to it that would also be more inviting to the female demographic that was perceived as uninterested in Gundam to that point in Japan. Which, I'm sure there were women in Japan who enjoyed Gundam. It's not an all-encompassing stereotype, but fewer women than men liked Gundam to that point.
Yeah, when I was living in Japan, I would conduct natural chats with various students, and there was maybe a 40-something suburban housewife who was just all in on Universal Century Gundam and was chastising me because at the time I liked Gundam Seed better. So there are definitely women in Japan who loves Gundam a lot.
Yeah, well, but I mean, also, Japan is kind of famous for its, the roles expected of you in society, and I think it's so gendered, the idea of Gundam, that they couldn't even imagine that Gundam, as it was to this point, could be attractive to any girls, that it was just a boys' show.
Oh, completely. And she was definitely getting a lot of weird looks from the from the other students. I got to say that much. But I was enjoying the conversation.
Yes, and the idea was heavily informed by what Bandai wanted, specifically that they wanted there to be 5 Gundam pilots instead of the usual 1 Gundam pilot that the series had before, and that they would all be teen boys who were still part of the, similar to original Gundam, starting point of this, solar system spanning war between Earth and space colonies, though it would be a reversal of the original Mobile Suit story where the Earth Federation were the bad guys invading the colonies and taking them over, and so the colonies, at least at the start, they're the underdogs against Earth, which
one of the things that's kind of interesting is I think you have to feel like Gundam Wing is really informed by G Gundam, especially because G Gundam also has like 5 or 6 protagonists who kind of formed their own little alliance and everything. Kunio Okawara, who designed all of the Gundams in Gundam Wing, when he was designing the Ultron Gundam, the whatever Wufei pilots, he said that he still had G Gundam very much on the brain, which is why it looks a lot like design from that show, which is basically a Gundam from China that that's kind of like from a Shaolin temple, that kind of thing.
The Shenlong Gundam is just it's a G fighter character for sure.
Yeah, the show's a real international flair.
Yeah, I like that too. It's funny then that they, held off on localizing it for 5 years when it does feel like something that goes far beyond Japan. But then again, Gundam, the first show, had a real kind of Star Trek vibe of just internationalism with the cast of characters.
Well, one of my favorite scenes with Wu Fei, and I think the scene that defines him, is where he's attacking one of the main villains, and the main villain basically signals that he wants to have a sword duel in person. And so Wu Fei explicitly gets out of his machine and they have a big old sword fight on the deck of a carrier. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, yep, that's Gundam Wing in a nutshell right there.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
It's very Metal Gear almost.
Yeah. Well, also, that's a good point of the show that, like, there are some cool mech battles in the show, but also, like, the characters drive it a lot more than just the mechs, and characters will constantly cast aside their mechs to have in-person battles, Like, in the classic thing in Gundam to me is in-person battles happen only after every mobile suit is broken, and they're just like, well, crap, we got a sword fight in space now, But in this show, they leave their mechs quite a lot. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about the folks behind the scenes on it. The series director was Masashi Ikeda. To that point, he was a Sunrise Lifer who had worked on the show as we know it, Ronin Warriors, if you remember that 80s anime. Head writer of the series was Katsuyuki Sumizawa, who was a screenwriter and novelist. This was his first Gundam work, which I think also is why this feels a bit fresher. He had previously worked on Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z, Ranma 1/2, Yu Yu Hakusho. So they wanted a more traditional, like, shonen or action TV writer there. And then they had top producer Hideyuki Tomioka as the person helping shape that vision on a more character-driven show that would also have a lot of storylines happening concurrently. Like, it's you need a chart sometimes to keep track of where everybody is in it. Also on Sumizawa, he has some really funny interviews out there. These interviews helped inform a lot of this behind the scenes stuff. But one of my favorites that doesn't have to do with Gundam, in his interviews, he was asked, like, what was the hardest script you ever wrote? And he said he wrote an episode of Dragon Ball Z that had to adapt 8 panels of a comic and make it last 25 minutes.
I wonder which one that was. It's probably cut out of Kai completely.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
It's like now 30 seconds in Kai.
It's got to be a Namek episode because those were the slowest of the slow. He also says he likes filler arcs because he's like, I'm finally free. I can just do what I want. Kat, you did mention the mecha designs mainly overseen by Gundam Mecha Patriarch Kunio Okawara. He did the main 5 suits and most of the major villains. Though I do think, he was told, like, make this more like a Sentai show. Make it more toyetic. Like, you see that green bubble on the chest of Wing Zero, and you're just like, this looks like it's straight out of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Like I mentioned, I prefer the Endless Waltz designs by Kotoki, which is like way even more exaggerated. Now the Wing Gundam has angel wings for some reason.
Yeah. That's Hajime Kotoki, who did handle some designs of, like, the more minor suits that are in kind of the background on this. But yeah, when it came time to do the sequel OVAs/movies of Endless Waltz, Kotoki took over, and those are pretty much everybody's favorite designs. Like, most of the toys or models now are Endless Waltz versions. And I think I remember in Endless Waltz, they even seem to imply that, like, oh no, these weren't redesigned. These aren't third versions of the mechs. The Gundams always looked this way.
Yeah, the ones with the wings are the ones I see the most.
Yeah.
Well, they're such iconic representations. I remember the first time I ever went to Disney World when I was in Epcot, and I went into the mall, a Japanese mall, and the kind of the going around the world thing. They had Endless Waltz models, and I didn't know one thing about Gundam, but that immediately caught my eye because I was like, wow, what an interesting design with the angel wings and everything. And I almost wanted to buy it, like, right then and there. So, I mean, you got to say, like, the designs worked. It advertises the toys.
And also worth mentioning is character designer Shuko Murase. He was also a longtime Sunrise employee who'd been animation director on multiple Gundam projects to that point, but also worked with Ikeda on Ronin Warriors. And that's a series with 5 boy leads as well. So he kind of wanted similar 5 lead male characters designed in that way. Murase was fresh off of working on the character designs for the Street Fighter II anime film, if you remember that one. And also, like Rare for Gundam, I think his character designs are more popular than the mecha designs, I think. Or they're equal. Like, people love those pretty boys. Like, when I think back to going to cons, I feel like I saw wall scrolls of the boys way more than I saw the Gundams.
When you see the whole crew at the end, I'm like, I remember all of these guys just from merchandise and being at cons.
They're also much fun. And like I said, it goes back to this being the most anime of Gundam shows. Amuro Ray is supposed to be kind of the every kid, right? He's a very normal looking person, whereas Hero is like, he's got the cloud strife like hair and the angry eyes. And you're just like, okay, who's this smoldering kind of monotone kid who's always wants to kill you?
Yeah, you're right. This was totally the archetype of so many Japanese media back then. Like there's him, and then in '97 in Japan, there's Cloud Strife, and right after that, there's Squall, who has a bit of Hero in him as well. Like you were seeing these kind of distant loner bad boys who you just want to fix, and help them out.
I didn't know that Duo was supposed to be the protagonist originally,
Oh.
but they actually created Hero because they were afraid that Duo would be too much of a departure from your standard kind of pouty Gundam protagonist.
He's too happy and friendly to be a Gundam lead. He needs to... The laughter he gives at the constant murder done that Duo does. Well, I mean, look, it's on the battlefield. It's there's no innocent people.
You don't
Everybody's
see
like,
the
Hero's such a
corpses.
gentle boy, and you're like, I see a psychopath, but okay.
No. Yes, Hero's he's also a psychopath.
One thing I didn't know, and I kind of learned in the course of researching this, was that apparently Ikeda stepped down halfway through the run of Gundam Wing and was replaced.
Oh, I'll get to that. Wait, I'll get to that.
All right, I'm getting ahead of you. Sorry.
But yeah, also in their designs, they kind of look to Saint Seiya as well, which I think you can see a bit of that in there. Ikeda was really concerned with the balance of how to tell a Gundam style story in Wing. Like, he wanted to bring in the ethos of, like, war in space and how tides turn and allegiances change and characters grow as the story goes on, like in classic Gundam. He wanted to stay away from specifically new type and any type of, the space psychics that are littered Tomino's vision of it. And there was an interview I read where it sounded like they were straight up scared of offending Tomino. Like, they're like, oh, we don't want to, we're all watching Tomino. We can't touch his Gundam ideas like new types. And
I'm kind of okay with that because speaking as somebody who hates Jedi and Star Wars, I don't mind something a little more grounded and down to earth.
And I mean, the Zero system isn't not a new type thing. The Zero system that comes in later.
I suppose. I mean, it kind of is controlling your brain or whatever. But there's a technological element to it instead of kind of a magical element.
And the show was produced out of Studio One in Sunrise, which is the production group that handled core Gundam shows to that point. And production began in the summer of 1994, leaving less than a year for the April 7th premiere in 1995. They had a lot of production issues on the show as it continued.
I can tell.
Director Ikeda is praised by that producer in interviews I read from a couple years ago. But even he admits Ikeda struggled with deadlines, which were ridiculous in the anime industry then and now. And he had trouble delivering on the scripts he was handed. And so he leaves the series in episode 26, which is a major turning point for the show, and then it's followed by 2 clip shows, which that shows you the problems they were having.
The old clip show in the middle.
And so
there's supposed to be flashbacks that were going to flesh out the rest of the cast and their backstories. So it's kind of sad that they ended up having to do clip shows.
Yeah, I mean, those flashbacks would have been time filler too, and I guess in that way, the flashbacks and the clip shows, they represent the midpoint cool down to then restart. But especially if I had paid,
I was thinking that
$30 for a VHS or DVD of this. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Oh no, that's so horrible.
that's the only time it bothered me. Like if it was a DVD with 3 episodes and one of them was the clip episode. Now, if you're watching like Crunchyroll or Funimation or whatever, like I'll just skip this one. But
Yeah.
you paid for that. You probably paid $10 for that one episode at Suncoast.
Because the license is the same for Viz or whoever. The license is the same for a clip show or a regular show. So they got to package them all the same. So yes, behind the scenes, uncredited, Shinji Takamatsu took over the series as director after Ikeda was let go. He oversaw the remaining 22 episodes of the series. And they do feel a little different. Sumizawa, he mentions how Ikeda, when he was director, he never wanted all 5 Gundams to be seen together. Like he was like, no, this is a fake team up show. They can't all be together in the same shot. But they did that a lot more in the second set of episodes.
Sounds like a lot of work to get all of those things on one screen.
The difference between Ikeda and Takamatsu, in my opinion, is in the first episode, which we'll get to, you have a Leo, which is like the kind of the Mook suit that explodes really easily, actually being able to shoot down the Wing Gundam. And by the end of the show, the heroes are literally going, you take 50 apiece and I'll take 50 apiece and split it down the middle. Like that's the difference there, I think.
Leos are such losers. Like they're a Mark II Zaku could wipe the floor with a Leo. Like
a beam will fly past it and it'll just explode, even though it was a total miss.
By the end of the series, the mecha genre had changed even more because Evangelion aired concurrently with the second half of this. Like the final episode of Evangelion aired the same week as the final episode of Gundam.
Oh, wow.
Not to drag Gundam Wing too much, but I mean, just look at the contrast between Evangelion and Gundam Wing, which Gundam Wing is kind of, look, I like Gundam Wing. It's cute and everything. It means a lot to mecha in the United States, but I mean, it's just kind of a stale retelling amalgamation of a lot of elements from previous much better Gundam shows ultimately, and is kind of cynically geared toward a particular audience, whereas Evangelion is gorgeous. And I mean, it must have just felt like a supernova. You flip from Gundam Wing and then you turn on Evangelion and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, though, in Gundam's defense, having this on at the same time as Evangelion, like still looked less stale than, say, Victory would have next to it, I think,
Oh, completely. And it definitely is a new take on Gundam in many ways. I mean, you were mentioning the fact that it starts with the heroes coming from the colonies down to Earth rather than fighting for Earth. And it doesn't follow the same beats as so many of the other Gundam shows. So in that respect, it kind of feels fresh and original. But if I were watching Gundam Wing in 1994, I would be like, man, they really are out of ideas.
And yes, as the series ended, Wing wasn't a giant success like Evangelion was, but the merch did sell fairly well, and it did accomplish Bandai's goal of expanding a much broader base of Gundam fandom, specifically with young girls who had previously never given the series a second thought. It did so well that not only were there, we've talked about the Endless Waltz OVAs, though before that, they actually did like a clip package OVA as well that just had like, and at the end though, you'll find out what happened to the characters after the finale. But then there was the real one, Endless Waltz, which had a new director too, which they kind of, it seems like they burnt out both directors on this. And
Poor guys.
They both actually left to work on Inuyasha. Like they didn't work at Sunrise anymore either. But Endless Waltz is really great. It was 3 OVA episodes first, and then that got repackaged with some slight changes into a 1998 film, and that's what we got here on Cartoon Network, was the film version.
Yeah, I recall it being a film. I was surprised it's actually OVAs.
Beautiful show too. Great animation.
Oh man, it's one of the last of the 90s OVAs. Like it's just gorgeous looking.
I remember the box being very pretty. It had like a cardboard like hollow foil slip cover of like the glorious robot angel that was really shiny.
And in typical Gundam fashion, the Wing story also continues a lot in manga and novels, many of which have not been localized here, and honestly sound kind of even more ridiculous from when I read the accounting of it. But there's 2 sides to the Gundam Wing history, because the American localization of it is a big deal too. So, Show's over in Japan, but in 1999 in the US, Bandai is trying to self-publish and distribute their own anime rather than working with ADV or Viz or any of the other folks because they want all that profit. And a year before, they'd been selling through the AnimeVillage.com website. Escaflowne, Gundam, Saber Marionette J, that's another of the ones I remember.
I remember all of these, like, kind of, not third-rate, but much smaller DVD sellers online. I miss them so much.
Yeah. And Bandai, like, they were very new to this. There's a really good interview done by Nozomi with Ken Iodomi, who he was the head of Bandai's early distributing of anime in the US in the late 90s, and he had come off of Manga Entertainment. Like, he had been running Manga Entertainment, sold that, and then Bandai hired him to start up their system. And so by 1999, they're like, well, we have regular Gundam, but we want to do Gundam Wing. Apparently, he was saying, like, Iodomi had this funny story of, like, he said Sunrise wouldn't share Gundam for the longest time. He like mimed them holding back a treasured heirloom from somebody. Like, no, you can't have it. No. And but he said once they were starting to import it, he was hearing two things. He had two voices in his ear. Sunrise was pushing him like, no, it should be the UC Century. It should be UC stuff. No, nothing else. But Bandai was pushing hard for Wing, mainly because of the 5 Gundams. And I think they were thinking like, well, if you have 5 Gundams, that's 5 lead model kits you can sell instead of just 1 model kit.
And ultimately, it was the right choice because, again, crossover hit. It definitely appealed to a much broader swath outside of the anime military nerds out there. And instead of putting on the original 1975 show after that, they should have put on Gundam X.
Yeah. Well, it really was a perfect storm for Gundam Wing because when they tried to bring the old stuff here, it's so old and creaky to some that they weren't interested in it. But the newer things...
And very slow paced, too.
And the newer stuff that was set in UC Century, you need a lot of background to understand. And also, there's not a ton of episodes. So even if it looks new, you can't really show it. Plus, you can't show them in the afternoon on kids' blocks because they're war stories. They're too violent. Like, Wing is honestly too violent for kids. But
it's funny. I was just thinking about how in the early 2000s, most of the things that we were watching were from the mid to late 90s in America. So like when I was listening to anime music in my car, it was like the hits from Japan in the 90s, but they were all new songs to me. But now we have like simul subs and everything. So the world has changed so much. Instead of waiting for years to get a license, it's just on TV immediately.
Yeah. I knew a number of smug fan sub collectors who were just like, oh, you're finally watching the Trunks arc? Pff, I saw that 5 years ago. I'm like, yeah, fuck you.
And my sub was full of swears.
Yeah. Yes.
When it comes to
Goku.
Gundam Wing, it was just violent enough that people who are watching anime for the first time would be like, wow, this is very different from your typical animation. But it wasn't so violent that it would be off-putting.
And it looked modern enough, too. Like, that also really helped it. And you have a fresh starting point. Like, if you watch the first episodes of the show and you know old Gundam, like, there's references that pay off, but you can just jump right in with the first episode of Gundam Wing and not be really lost or anything.
Yes, source. I watched Gundam Wing second, so it was just a whole different story to it. I had absolutely no knowledge of 0079 or anything like that, and it stood on its own just fine.
Mm-hmm. And so they were finally able to convince Bandai and Sunrise to give up Gundam Wing and let that be the next series. They did after doing the movies 0080 and 0083. Now they were finally going to do Gundam Wing. And this was also going to be their biggest project with dubbing as well, because the Anime Village launch was subs. Like, they didn't get dubs going for a little while longer. And so they turned to the top pros in non-union voice acting, Vancouver's Ocean Group.
A very Canadian show, this one.
I think Zax is the most guilty of Canadian accent. But yes, there's so many classic anime names. You got Mark Hildreth as Hero, Scott McNeil as Duo. Oh my God, he's so good. I love Scott. He the original Piccolo, Scott McNeil as Duo. Kirby Morrow as Troa, Brad Swally as Quatre. Like, Scott McNeil has been doing duo lines on command at anime cons for 20 years now.
I wonder if he's on, what's that thing called? Cameo? That thing where you get celebrity
Ooh,
videos?
I should look into that.
We need to be on that, Henry. $5. $5 for me.
Oh, sure. I'll $2.50 for me.
Oh, damn it. He's undercutting me.
But yes, so they're working on it, but they originally just planned it as VHS, and in 1999, they're finally starting to publish DVDs as well, so they're going to start putting those out. But at the same time, Cartoon Network's Toonami block is doing some of the biggest ratings the channel has ever seen. Toonami launched in 1997 with, Voltron, Thundercats, and old action things that were from the 80s. But in 1998, they got Robotech and Dragon Ball Z, and especially Dragon Ball Z changed everything about Toonami.
Yeah, 98 was just ground zero for anime explosion in America. I mean, it had been taking off a little bit with like Mega Nerds, but like Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, and like eventually Gundam, it was just all happening at once. Like everyone was being exposed to it via basic cable channel.
Yeah, Toonami was a huge step forward for American anime because, like, when they got Dragon Ball Z, they got the syndicated episodes that had been trying to get, popularity, but for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, it was a loser show that couldn't take off,
Yeah.
which is like what Adult Swim was, buying up all the loser shows that nobody wanted.
And Dragon Ball Z did so well in 1998 that when the third season and finally new episodes of it premiered and we could see the rest of the Namek saga, it was the highest rated thing in Cartoon Network history when Dragon Ball Z resumed. So Toonami is the hottest thing on cable then.
The sad fact about me is I've only seen Dragon Ball Z up to that point because by the time there were new episodes, I had moved on.
Oh.
So I do want to watch that via Dragon Ball Kai at some point in my life. I think there's finally time now to do that.
All the time in the world.
I was a little sad that I missed Toonami because it felt like a very specific time in being an anime fan. And so, I didn't come in until the Adult Swim block started in 2001.
Oh, that's too bad. You did miss out. Yeah.
It was my little joy when I got home. I was like constantly shamed by my peers for everything I liked. So when I got home, it's like, everyone understands me on this cable channel.
I do remember that joy of like getting home at 3 p.m. and just like, all right, Toonami block's getting started. And so I was already an avid Toonami watcher in 99. Like, I was catching DBZ and getting the annoyance of like, oh, this is what I remember is the most recent episode. Maybe there'll be new episodes starting that. No, they're starting back with episode 1.
And just going online and learning like, oh, this is when Dragon Ball Z started. Oh, it ended in 1995. Yeah. Oh, I can get manga. Oh, there's so much merch. Yeah, I remember just going on eBay and buying posters and stuff for this new show that was new to me, but we were watching episodes from 10 years ago.
Late 1999, Cartoon Network executives have a meeting with Bandai US folks, and they're shown Gundam Wing, and the Cartoon Network exec, actually from about at the start of March, there's this great IGN article talking to the Cartoon Network exec at Toonami, who the second he was shown Gundam Wing, he was like, I have been wanting to put Gundam on TV in the US forever. We're all in Bandai. We're doing it. And so they license it, and Bandai was so happy to get it on the Toonami block. Toonami, they even cut together a 2-minute long commercial for it that's narrated by Peter Cullen, and it rules.
I remember that commercial, yeah. I think he did a lot of the promos at that time.
He was because he was the guy who intros Voltron, they're just like, you should just be the voice of Toonami for a few years.
I'm pretty sure in my Big O episode, I put in a Big O promo he narrated.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you listeners will get to hear that in the break, too. The wonderful Peter Cullen commercial. And they sell it to Toonami, but there's a little bit of a problem. As you can see, this is a show about war and killing. The main character is the gentlest boy in this kills 50 people.
He murders so many people up front.
Well, it's war and it's self-defense.
And enjoys it. He's laughing.
Almost civilians.
So they need to make some edits, and so blood and violence get cut down. There's no, other universe in this, or another dimension. They don't go that far, but cusses get cut away. Even uses of the word death, like Duo is the god of death, but they changed that for the Toonami airing.
There's no other dimension though, thankfully.
Yes, yeah.
Can't quite work out in this reality.
Oh, his parachute was just seen off screen.
Thank God he's okay. okay.
You almost killed him. They are making those cuts, but they're very lucky that this is right around when Toonami is launching their Midnight Run block of programming. Before was just showing the old stuff, but they got special permission that Gundam Wing, there's no nudity in Gundam Wing, so they're like, you know what? It can be uncut, just uncut Gundam Wing at midnight. This was, to that point, the dirtiest thing that it aired on Cartoon Network was characters saying, damn.
They were still bleeping out Jesus on Futurama reruns, or they would be like a few years later. So
I was watching Wing on some days when I was really into it. I'd watch Wing in the afternoon, and I'd be like, "All right, what's the uncut version like?" I'm watching that. And
Pure uncut Gundam.
And the Wing was a huge hit for U.S. otakus. Like, it defines Gundam for millions to this day. And, the series, it ran from March to May and then reran all the way until November. And that's when Endless Waltz made its U.S. television debut, again shattering ratings records for Cartoon Network at the time. Like, it was that big.
It always made me a little sad that they couldn't keep the momentum.
I think the timeline shows that's when Tomino came back to Sunrise and Gundam, and I think that's when Sunrise had a little more power to insist on 0079 being the next series, not G-Fighter, though G-Fighter did come in time.
it did.
I mean, like Gundam 0079, and then Gundam Seed didn't really resonate either. Like,
Yeah.
Gundam Seed was a much better looking show than 0079. It was totally modern and everything, and it was more anime for sure. Like, the characters kind of look like it, but American anime fans had just moved on by that point. For whatever reason, Gundam Wing, that was the show. That was the one.
I couldn't find any on the record statements about it, but I got to think there is some anger in the Sunrise offices that the one that is most popular to Americans is a series they're not very interested in, and half the directors of it both quit afterwards, so they can't even continue it properly.
And then logical step was to release Gundam X, which looks a lot like Gundam Wing. But Sunrise was embarrassed by Gundam X because it had been canceled in Japan, which is like the first Gundam show to actually be canceled since the original. So they're like, heck no, we're not going to release this failure in America, even though it would appeal way more to American anime fans. Here, have this 1979 TV show that nobody's going to be able to engage with.
Yeah, I think no one really had the context for it either.
Yeah.
Of like why it was important or even like really what it was.
And then 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
And, But as for Wing, though, it has a long legacy with both American fans and Japanese audiences too, and across the globe as well. And you'll still see references to it in throwback models, like they appear, like you said, in Super Robot Wars. You usually get at least one Wing character, and in pretty much all of the many, many, many Gundam games that Bandai Namco puts out, there was one Wing exclusive video game that came out concurrently with the show for the Super Famicom.
Pretty good too.
Oh, is that a fighting game?
I believe
Yes.
it is.
Oh
yeah.
wow, yeah. I think I remember playing the ROM of that in the early 2000s.
They'll still make appearances in the many Gundam crossover games and the Musos and the card games and all the 8,000 Gundam games that Bandai Namco treats us Gundam fans with every year.
I know, it's great.
And for a time, though, Bandai Entertainment stopped releasing things in the United States. And so Gundam Wing was just like all the other Gundam shows, being very unavailable for some time. But they came back with a vengeance, all the Gundam series, but especially Wing, because unlike some Gundam series, it is fully online and streaming on Crunchyroll and Hulu on top of Blu-ray releases from Nozomi Entertainment. So Gundam Wing has never been more available.
I remember the salad days of like 6 different anime publishing labels and how they were all different. And I was like, I don't like Media Blasters, but I love Bandai releases. They were really good.
This is a great time to be a Gundam fan. It's so wonderful to be able to get pretty much any show on 2 Blu-rays or even 1 Blu-ray. It's great.
Yeah. Oh man, I got Zeta on 2 Blu-ray collections for like $50 total. Like I could never dream of that day in 1999. And I mean, like the Gundam, I looked up the old VHSs of Gundam Wing. They still were 3 episodes tape, like a 75-minute tape. They have a big sticker on them that says, as seen on Cartoon Network. So it really took me back just searching on eBay for VHSs of Gundam Wing.
It's only a good VHS anime release if all the spines eventually display one big picture.
Oh, yeah. Or you can get a box set for it. Oh, I so treasured my Gundam 83 box set that in its big cardboard box, and it got dustier and dustier over time. I think I just threw it out when
Those
I moved.
were just dust magnets. Oh, yeah, I also missed just the ridiculous packaging and boxes of that era, too. Just what a waste of material.
They're dotting every garbage dump around America now.
I wonder what the fake bag of blood that came with my Helsing is doing right now. It came with a fake bag of blood. Do not eat.
But all right, I guess that's it for the history of Gundam Wing. When we come back, we're going to talk about the first episode.
In the distant future, mankind has reached the stars, but the galaxy is troubled.
What do you think you're doing? Don't fire!
The Earthsphere Alliance rules the outlying colonies with an iron fist.
I'm sure God would understand the steps we're taking.
Isn't it about time you people realized the ones posing the most threat are none other than yourselves? We've had enough!
Those who oppose them
We won't be needing you any further.
What?
die. Battles are waged with mobile suits, the key to military dominance. The only hope for the colonies. 5 elite soldiers and their legendary mobile suits called Gundams.
There will be a day when the Gundams will save us all.
What this is war.
All of you are very mistaken, and the Gundams will soon come to rectify your mistakes.
Silence!
Now, these pilots will shake the foundations of the Alliance and change the course of history.
You saw I was a kid and you underestimated me.
Shouldn't be fighting at all!
If they can stay alive.
Those Gundam pilots are desperate. They'll battle even if it means forfeiting their lives.
Mission accepted.
It's a Gundam! Enemy attack!
I'll eliminate all obstacles.
Just who are you anyway?
Say goodbye.
Get all mobile suits ready for combat at once! Catch you!
Don't die on me!
From the Gundam universe, a new chapter in one of the greatest anime sagas of all time. Gundam Wing. Weekdays at 5:30. Suit up.
Those who have laid eyes on a Gundam shall not live to tell about it.
Only Toonami.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for listening this week, and a big thank you to our guest, Kat Bailey, the Gundanium of the podcast guests. I'm Henry.
Hey everybody, it's Bob. I'm wearing my fun safari gear where I'm going to taunt animals for 30 seconds.
And big thank you to all of you guys listening. And you know, our biggest thank you goes to our Patreon supporters because they help me and Bob do this full time with their patronage.
Yes, and if you go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons and sign up at the $5 level, you can get all of these podcasts 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, and then access to everything behind the $5 paywall. That includes almost 3 years worth of exclusive content we've made just for Patreon. That, of course, includes all of our limited miniseries like Talking Critic, Talking of the Hill, Talking Futurama, and the most recent one we're doing right now is Talking Mission Hill. We're doing the entire only season of Mission Hill with the Talking Simpsons / What a Cartoon treatment, and it's only on on the Patreon, along with interviews, end of season wrap-ups for Talking Simpsons, and deleted scene specials for Talking Simpsons as well, and also so many other things. Too many things to mention here, but if you sign up immediately, you will have access to all that stuff right away. As soon as you sign up, you'll have access to everything that you're paying for $5 a month at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And Henry, what is happening at the $10 level? One extra long podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher.
That's right. If you want all of that $5 stuff and some extras, you need to sign up for $10 a month at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. You get a ton of extras. Most importantly, our What a Cartoon movie podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast but wish we talked about animated feature films, you need to listen to the What a Cartoon podcast. You hear a preview of it every month on the free feed, but you get to hear the often over 4 hours long discussion of different animated films. If you sign up now, you get a back catalog of over 70 hours of What a Cartoon movie podcasts. Our most recent ones, we did Toy Story 2 last month. This month we're doing Space Jam. Previous ones, if you're a fan of anime, include Cowboy Bebop the movie, Akira, Kiki's Delivery Service, and many, many more. You want to hear that entire back catalog right now. $10 a month at patreon.com/Talking Simpson.
And if you've never signed up for Patreon before, it's incredibly easy to do. And once you do, they're just going to give you a code, and you have access to that code at all times. And you drop that into whatever you use to listen to podcasts. And you can listen to our bonus podcast alongside all of your regular free podcasts that you normally listen to. And there is also a Patreon app that's very easy to use if you want to sign up that way at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. But either way, it is so easy to access all of our bonus content that's waiting for you behind the paywall.
All right, I hope you guys enjoyed our just communication with you about our Patreon. So why don't we hear the rest of our chat about Gundam Wing and its premiere episode. Okay, and we're back, and you guys just got to enjoy Just Communication by 2Mix, the really great opening song of this year.
I'm sure I had this burn on a CDR I was listening to in my car, not knowing what it was from even, or probably knowing what it was from, but never having really seen Gundam Wing.
Yeah, it's a bop, man. Whenever I hear this music, I'm like, I just want to live in 90s J-pop forever. I just love it so much. Maybe because it makes me feel like a teen again.
It does.
Yeah.
And like right up front in this OP, I gotta say, like, it made me aware, like, oh, we're in the era in which Japan has no money. We're just out of money in Japan. Lots of, this is a very cheap looking show outside of the few like transformation sequences, but I can definitely tell, like, oh, we're in the recession right now.
There's a couple of real, I'll get to them each scene, but I'm like, whoa, that saves some money. But the OP still looks pretty good.
Yeah, it looks fine. I mean, I think it holds up better than shows like Gundam Seed, which have this really airbrushed digital look to it.
Oh yeah.
Whereas Gundam Wing, at least, I think the grid is really charming. Actually.
Even if it's a bunch of still images, they're still like hand painted, and you can like feel the texture of like the cell paint and the layers and stuff like that. I do enjoy that part.
And when I turned it on, first of all, it has a really kind of iconic, really catchy opening. You're just immediately engaged, and I was like, all right. As soon as the camera whipped up and the title appeared and they were yelling "Just Wild Beat Communication," I was like, all right, I'm in. I'm all in on Gundam Wing. Let's buckle up and let's do this thing. I'm gonna watch every single episode for the rest of the night.
It is not an anime OP from the 90s unless there's one bizarre English phrase in it somewhere.
Oh yeah. It still takes me back, like seeing the on Hulu. It's an untreated OP, meaning it's all the Japanese text on screen, including the lyrics. And I just remember that excitement when I would watch those as a kid, and just like, oh, there's the English text. I can read this part. Yeah,
I can read. You get to burning. That should have been Bernie Sanders' theme song.
You get to Bernie.
You get to Bernie.
I actually prefer Rhythm
the
Emotion, which doesn't appear until the last couple episodes of the original Gundam Wing run, but I just like the opening.
And a little background on 2 Mix that I didn't realize. They're a pop duo, though one half of it is Minami Takayama, a very prolific voice actress in her own right, who does the leads in What a Cartoon classics like Detective Boy Conan and Kiki's Delivery Service. She was Kiki.
Oh, really? I forgot that Conan and Kiki were the same voice actor.
Yes,
wow.
Yeah. I mean, Minami Takayama, I believe she is Conan Edogawa to this day as well. And there's so many great just poses in here, and just like the action shots, like, oh man, that move is Shenlong's arm, like it being just this long snaky ass dragon arm, like taking a bite out of something. Love that.
I mainly remember the song for like trailers for this on Bandai DVDs.
Oh, really?
I think that's where I got the idea to download it, from Napster.
And also the opening, they have a real focus on Gundam Wing transforming into an aircraft, which was an executive note from Bandai. Like the writer was very clear of like, they said this has to be 5 guys, and they all have specific Gundams. They're like, well, all right, I guess that's where we're starting from in this story.
You got to show off all the toys first. Here's how the toys work.
I mean, you talk about it being a recession, like Bandai needs to sell as many figures as possible. So yeah, if you have 5 lead Gundams, you can sell 5 more models to the fanboys out there.
And everybody's going to be able to pick their favorite.
I have my favorite. Do you guys have your favorite?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I think so.
Well, I'll start. Heavy Arms is my favorite Gundam design because honestly, I love its almost like childlike style of guns are everywhere. It's just how when I was a kid, if I drew a Transformer, I'd be like, what if Optimus Prime had 5 more guns? And I'll put a gun there and a gun there. And so that's what Heavy Arms is. It just always has guns. And I love how it just like reloads, or like when it's out of bullets, it's like, okay, time to get out my little knife. and I definitely had at least one figure of Heavy Arms as well.
Oh, wow. Nice. I've only seen it once in this episode, but I like Wu Fei's because it's the most like a Mega Man X power.
You're
where
so right.
It's just like, it's a snake arm that's also a grappling hook that shoots fire. Okay,
rad.
Let's do it.
I like the original Wing Gundam, but I like the Kotoki re-envisioning of it, which was released as a master grade model. And just because they really clean it up, like they make the wings a lot bigger, they make the Buster rifle like absolutely gigantic and look really rad. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can get on board with that. And it was actually, the Kotoki version was actually an unlockable unit in one of the Super Robot Wars games. So I will always have a deep affection for that one.
That Buster cannon gets bigger and bigger every time they draw it.
It looks cool.
And also as a kid, as a teen, I didn't get the puns. Like every character's name is a pun. They're all numbers except for Hero Yui. Apparently Yui is like alone or soul. It doesn't like S-O-L-E.
It could mean one, right?
Yeah. Well, though there's Lady Un, who is the number 1.
I was looking for who was number 1. Turns out it was me.
Number 1. And Duo, that's 2. Troa, that's the French 3. Quatre for Wu is Mandarin for the number 5.
It's a word that's hard to say in English and Japanese. It's calt.
Wait, what?
It's the Quatre. It's calt.
Calt.
Okay.
Calt.
But you can't do it in English or Japanese. It's just Calt.
That's I'm still confused.
It's not Calt or
Yeah.
Cart. It's Calt.
And Zex is it's actually like sex, but that's six in German. So.
Let's have Zex.
No, Bob. And in the opening, we've got Relina, and I think it's important how she's portrayed too. Like, she's a very non-sexualized female character that I think is definitely built to be identified with by female viewers, not in the way a lot of women are designed in anime to be for the viewer to have a crush on them,
She's got this like Victorian get up at the end of this episode in this Catholic school, it seems.
It's like a French, it really reminds me of Utena, actually. The very similar school.
Probably one of the most famous examples of the incredibly toxic fandom that can coalesce around anime. There were a lot of people who really, 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 really hated Relina.
That's what I remember the most from this show, Kat. Just the pure hatred for this character.
And it's interesting because actually she was a pretty influential character in the Gundam mythos. There were a lot of characters who came after her that were very similar to her, but a lot of people get fixated on her behavior in this episode in particular, where she's kind of like, thirsting for a hero, even though he's like this crazy person who's promising to kill her. But they kind of and then also you have a lot of people who are mad because she's constantly interfering with the shipping and the pairing, and everybody like has to kill her off so that the boys can start kissing in earnest. But I think the thing that I really like about Relina in hindsight is that she has a lot of agency in the show. She's constantly making her own destiny. She's not her arc isn't just entirely dependent on being in love with Hiro or whatever, even though like that's kind of her in the early going. And she actually grows into kind of a neat, interesting character who's like the moral center of the show. It's good. Like I think she's the best part of Gundam Wing.
Yeah, I remember all of the making fun of Relina came from that invitation scene. I just would hear about that constantly. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, it's the first episode? Wow. I didn't know it was up front like this.
Yeah, I mean, going back and watching other episodes in prep for this, it reminded me of like Relina goes through so much in this series. Like, that's why if you make fun of her or mock her character based on this episode, the entire point of this episode is she is portrayed as, naive and selfish and kind of a bratty girl at times. But that's because she's going to grow into basically the president of the universe by the time the show's over.
I assume it's like, she's kind of unlikable here because this is episode 1 and she has a journey to make because it's fiction.
I mean, her father's murdered, spoiler alert, and she's kind of alone in this insane world where everybody's trying to take advantage of her, and she's just basically knuckles down and carves out her own path in this war-torn, crazy world. And go, Relina.
And yes, also for all the shippers out there, I think they don't like her because it's not who they would ship the characters with either. Not either if it was an MM pairing or an FM pairing, it would not involve Relina in it in most cases because she's, I guess too, in an action show, having the character who's a pacifist can piss people off if they want to see action.
That was another thing I picked up on. That's why they hated her, like the fans, and the discussion was about that as well. Like she's a pacifist in this show with cool fighting.
Yeah, she's constantly arguing that cool fights shouldn't happen, which philosophically is good, and I'm glad she does that. But as a viewer who wants to see cool fights, I can see why you'd be pissed that she's constantly trying to stop them.
And can we also briefly talk about the ending credits where she becomes an Instagram model harassing animals on safari?
Yeah.
I loved it because it was like they gave someone free reign. They're like, I don't know what to do for this thing. You figure it out. And they came back with all these weird. I mean, in the beginning, it's just like, it's just like, it's almost like the ending of the original Dragon Ball anime. It's like Bulma just having a me day or whatever. And then it's all of a sudden she's at the zoo and like yanking on a rhino's tail and like scaring parrots. I'm like, whoa, what's happening?
I guess the thinking on the ending theme is that, again, you're supposed to be identifying with Relina and you're like, oh, this is her cool adventures. Like, I want to be a cool girl like her, getting to do all these, like, meeting lions and having a big dog. Like, definitely I've seen a number of anime where the rich girl of a group of girls, like in Azumanga Daioh, part of the sign that she is a wealthier character is that she has the space for a dog, and she
Yeah,
owns
that's
a big
right.
dog. But now when I watch it, at the time of this recording, Tiger King, the documentary, is new. So seeing her with all these exotic animals, especially the lions, I'm like, she just went to the GW Zoo run by Joe Exotic.
She's in Florida.
Yes. I mean, she can fly around everywhere she wants. She's that well off and well to do. But yes, the show, after that amazing opening, it begins as many Gundams do with a helpful narrator explaining the situation for us.
With high expectations, human beings leave Earth to begin a new life in space colonies. However, the United Earth Sphere Alliance gains great military powers and soon seizes control of one colony after another in the name of justice and peace. The year is after Colony 195, Operation Meteor. In a move to counter the Alliance's tyranny, rebel citizens of certain colonies scheme to bring new arsenals to the Earth, disguising them as shooting stars. However, the Alliance headquarters catches on to this operation.
This, I have to wonder how a new viewer would have taken all this in, having never heard of Gundam, because for the original audience, it was like, well, you know what Gundam is, so you have a lot of the context, but coming into
this... They do that
this...
with the original Gundam, too.
Yeah.
Like, it's traditional to kind of have the introduction to all of the background. And as somebody who's really into sci-fi and kind of into, being grounded in the setting, like, stuff like this is catnip. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, you're giving me all of these, like,
lore.
Really, give me all these details, more details. Oh, yes, tell me the exact date. I want to know the exact date.
And also, these are shades of 0079, but also inversions. I mean, first off, Mobile Suit Gundam premiered in 1979, and it takes place in 0079. This premieres 1995. It's AC 195.
Okay.
But this is a reverse trajectory of original Mobile Suit Gundam, because it is the Earth that is the aggressor, and they're even in, like, the uniforms of the Earth Federation are Fedi colors of the Federation from Classic Gundam. And also, the first story is Amuro Ray is a rookie starting out in the colonies in space, working towards getting to Earth. Meanwhile, these are super pro terrorists, basically, who are sent to Earth. And so they start on Earth and work their way to the colonies.
One more inversion is that in the original show, the Zeon is kind of the aristocratic people. They look like they're from early 19th century France or whatever. And in Gundam Wing, it's the people on Earth who are dressed like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of aristocracy in this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's supposed to be evocative of a show like Rose of Versailles or something like that, like a famous shoujo anime.
And also, to show you the stakes early on, you get to see a Leo blast what is clearly a non-military craft. So it shows you who's the bad guys in this scenario. Yes, so I also like that the narrator editorializes there. He's like, and peace. Not really. You see how non-peaceful this is. Yeah, things, though, get more complicated from there. But our 5 heroes are shot off into space. We get that really cool shot of the 4 lines all intersecting on Earth, and then the one in the center. That's our hero.
I thought that one exploded upon first viewing. I'm not sure what. Because there is like an explosion for that one. What were they implying there?
Maybe that was a flash forward, because it does blow up on entry when it gets shot up.
Yeah, I was wondering, because I was like, I guess one of them didn't make it, and we'll hear about that later. But no, it's his thing.
And yes, the title of the episode is "This Shooting Star She Saw."
A real tongue twister. By the seashore.
It sets Relena as the main character, though. Like, she is the she of this story. And in the Japanese title is Shoujo ga Mita Ryusei, which Google translates to "The Girl Sees a Meteor." So
I like that better.
And yes, as they are heading towards Earth, we then get to meet the show's Char clone, which there already was a long history of Char clones up to 1995, not just in Gundam, but in anime history.
Just give me a pompous blonde guy in a mask, and I'm in love with it.
The rival character is a constant in anime and Japanese storytelling for the longest time. Char just became perhaps the most famous rival in anime history. There are so many characters that recreate him, and I think Zex is one of the most interesting ones.
Really?
Yeah, because, he goes through in 49 episodes the entire like Char lifespan of him from 79 up to Char's counterattack. Like Zex goes through it all. That it takes Char like a decade of shows to go through.
Yeah, that always kind of annoyed me once I actually knew who Char was. I see a lot of people call Zex low rent Char, which I think kind of fits.
I mean, he's not as ambitious, and he's kind of. I mean, Zex is more
cool
of like,
helmet though.
Oh, his helmet's
It's a great helmet.
But you're right. Yeah, Zex is a lot less ambitious. Like he kind of just falls into things. Like Char works very hard and plans a whole lot. Like he's a master planner. While Zex is more like, oh, so history has left me here. Well, then I'm gonna do this.
And he's got hair like Zero from Mega Man.
He does. It's beautiful.
He's given beautiful girl hair. Yeah.
I thought it was a cape at first.
You know, I guess that shows the changes in beauty standards in anime design because Char was also a pretty boy in his time, but in 95 they're like, well, the prettiest pretty boy needs long hair to to truly be beautiful. But yes, let's hear a little bit of Zex.
Lieutenant Zex, surveillance is reporting a meteorite. Figures. The satellite surveillance folks are practically blind. They really think a meteorite would ride the wave course to enter the Earth's atmosphere. So it's just as Oz headquarters told us. Right, it's Operation M for certain. There's no doubt about it. How many of them can this carrier catch up with? Just one. The one headed for Eastern Eurasia. One would do just dandy. A hired frontline soldier mustn't rush to battle. That's quite the bold statement, sir. I told you, I am a true soldier.
God, his subordinates suck. I would get like he's always like, no. Here's what's actually happening. Like he's always like reassuring them.
They're lost boys. They're just like, but sir, well, what about this? Well, here's a basic military strategy.
I mean, they're there so he can explain to the audience.
Yes.
He's not talking to himself, but it's like, man, these guys need to get it together.
Well, they're as dumb as the stormtroopers in Star Wars. Like they basically are saying like, it's probably there's no life signs on there. Clearly, it's an empty spacecraft.
He's got to tell them like 5 times, like, no, he's not killing himself.
Yeah.
We've been over this.
I also like that Zex is introduced like reading a book because he's a fancy smart guy.
He's a fancy lad.
Yeah.
He's not introduced watching opera, which made me laugh really hard.
I also like how Zex, in classic Char clone style, he is more skilled and smarter than our lead character, our lead pilot is. Like, I also got a chuckle of like, oh yeah, Hiro is the one headed closest to Japan. That's why he's the main character. When you see the Eurasia map, you're like, oh yeah, that's near Japan.
And he is the Japanese character of the 5.
Yes,
too.
Yeah. And we also we hear about Oz for the first time. The show not only is every character named after a number, or just about every character, but a lot of characters are named after Wizard of Oz things, or like there's like the Lion Battalion and the Tin Man Battalion.
Oh, okay.
Or
and Dorothy Catalonia.
Yep.
Yeah.
The very important character of Dorothy. There's so it's something that in general I liked realizing over time. I was just like, oh yeah, every character name is a pun name in so much of my favorite anime. Like, I mean, every Dragon Ball character is a silly pun because their roots are in gag manga, I think by early 2000, I already was informed enough with tropes that the second I saw Dorlin, I was like, well, you're dead. You're not a guy who sticks around the whole series.
His design isn't interesting enough for him to stay alive.
You're right.
In this world.
You're right. A character that everybody wants to talk to, but looks kind of boring. You're like, well, that's not going to be the regular guy. But yeah, the character also, she's meant to evoke Audrey Hepburn, which not just in her, classiness and the way she handles herself, but I think also like, Audrey Hepburn later in her life was a conservationist and a peacetime advocate, so I think it fits with the way she lived her life and also how she looked. But yes, when we first meet her, she's acting rather childish. She's, mad at her dad for not having time for her on their space trip. She's just like, you should have made more time for me. She doesn't understand the sacrifices that a politician must make in these times of war. But then she sees something out her window. A shooting star, perhaps she sees.
Father, what is that?
Relative speed to target 01545. Engaging auto lock. Ready to shoot the obstacle down. Earth's assault carrier.
caught up. I'll bring it up on screen. Just as I thought. So that's their little battle seed, all ready to sprout into new battles. Operation M. He has to reduce speed. There's a civilian shuttle ahead. Isn't there a chance he'd shoot down the shuttle and increase his speed? It's not very likely that he's going to shoot it down right in front of us. He's on a secret mission, you have to remember.
The Alliance is already onto me. Damn it.
I was going to ask, he was going to shoot it down, right?
He was going to kill her.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. That's crazy. That's how the main character is established, about to waste some civilians.
It's the first of many time Hero plans to kill Relina and then doesn't.
So the premise is that he's on a secret mission. And the thing that always kind of stood out to me is pretty dang hard to be on a secret mission in a 30-foot tall robot.
Yeah, it's not but mobile suits are how people fight, and especially if you got a mobile suit made out of Gundanium, you're going to use it.
So I promise not to go into other Gundam shows, but actually there's kind of a modern retelling of Gundam Wing, which is Gundam 00.
Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is also about 5 different Gundams coming down to Earth and trying to basically declare war on the established powers and everything. And I think season 1 in particular is, very good. And it makes a lot more sense than Gundam Wing. So
Yeah, as the show goes on, you'll meet more characters who explain at least a little bit of like, well, but why'd you do it this way? Or how'd you do it this way? But it's very strange in the start episode. But yeah, you're seeing that Hero is like, he just has this cold willingness to kill civilians so he can land easier on his mission. And the only thing that stops him was that screen flashing that tells him like, no, don't kill those people, Hero. Like he's very different from Amuro Ray for sure. Amuro, he feels weird just killing enemy combatants, let alone he would never shoot a civilian spacecraft, even if it was key to his mission. But that, much like how Relina acts in this episode, Hero is, he's at his darkest, and he needs a loving woman to fix him and make him better, as so many dark bad boys of anime have had. And meanwhile, like, Zex has so many ridiculous philosophical lines, like the seeds are going to sprout. And, I'm sure, these are silly lines for anybody to say. I don't know if Brian Drummond, the voice actor, could have done a better job with it.
Oh, Vegeta.
But I do think Takahito Koyasu, the Japanese voice actor, handles it way better.
I mean, you buy those lines from a guy wearing a mask.
That's true. I guess it is very overly dramatic. That fits for him. But
I'm just impressed that he was able to say it without tripping up, because it's a little bit of a tongue twister.
And to have to do it with this character voice, that's this. Like, he kind of is hissing already, is Zex. Hero's biggest edge in these early battles as they begin is that he has, like, near suicidal disregard for his own safety. Like, he throws himself into battle, he gets shot. Like, there's a pretty gross to watch bit in the 3rd episode where he just, like, breaks his leg and then just resets it. It just walks around.
I mean, we'll get to it, but when he leaves his Gundam, when he leaves his mech, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
You can do that?
It is a pretty cool animation, though, when the ship explodes off of the wing to reveal it in, plane mode. Like, it's really cool looking. Once the Gundam mech is revealed, the fight begins.
I'll escape, no prob. Alter mission. That craft is carrying Oz mobile suits. Judging by its speed, there's probably 3 suits on board. Roger that, mission. I'll return right now to shoot down the Oz carrier.
Enemy fighter has turned around and is headed straight for us. Is Leo ready for use? Yes, but you're going after him with a mobile suit? You guessed it. Then wouldn't the Ares Lightspeed mobile suit be better than the Leo ground battle mobile suit? My Leo is plenty fast enough. Besides, if it's a fight he wants, I should at least give him my best.
Lieutenant Zex, I'll send backup as soon as Ares is ready. Roger.
What the? He's above!
I wanted this guy to say, like, from this point on, no more questions. But sir, isn't the other thing better than the one you're using? Okay, I'm the boss. I'm leaving.
Let me tell you about chain of command here.
Yeah, it's
all
like,
right?
you guys are going to be executed.
I feel like they had to have put in a script note going, look, we need to establish the names of all of these models so that when the kids go to the model section, they know which one they're looking for, the Leo ground type suit or the Ares air type suit.
Yeah,
It's true.
yep.
No, it's like, but sir, isn't the Leo available for $29.99?
Yeah. But then Aries will work just fine at $35.95.
But they look so nice, so close together on my shelf.
I'm going to get into my perfect grade Leo. But sir, the high grade one is a great value.
But obviously, I'd need 2 Leos to make it be a better tableau. No, I do think this fits though with like the first meeting of Char and Amuro too. Is that Char isn't just a Zaku, which is much lower grade than a Gundam, but Zex is so skilled that he can match the Gundam with his lame-o Leo suit.
Hey, hats off to anybody who can actually score a kill in a Leo. Good job.
Well, even then, it's still like a tie, really, this fight.
But he kind of looked cool, too. I mean, like when he jumps out and he's hanging in the atmosphere, I think Gundam battles that take place in the atmosphere are always the most fun because it's such a dynamic environment.
I just love a free fall fight. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, he kind of legit he immediately is established as highly competent, as you're already saying, in that he is able to take a much lesser mobile suit and do a lot of damage while also being in kind of an extreme environment. So yeah, I like it. And then like a little bit later when he comes down and he ignites the beam saber and then just grabs right onto the Gundam and sends it right into the ocean, it's like, oh, good move. And he's like parachuting down like, all right, yep. I'm done. My job here is finished.
It all went as planned, all according to Keikaku.
We didn't see where he landed, though.
But as the fight begins to, Ares and Leo, one of many enemy mobile suits named after the zodiac signs. So that's the naming convention there. But yes, the hero does surprise him with Wing transforming from a plane to a mobile suit, which is kind of the opposite. Like, I believe it was Tomino didn't want the original mobile suit to transform, but like Bandai was like, no, it should have a plane mode. So
I mean, this goes back to Zeta Gundam, which has all the transforming units and everything.
Mm-hmm. But here's when the first transformation happens in the show.
I love it.
Transformed into a mobile suit.
Lieutenant Zex, what kind of machine is that?
No idea. I thought only the Alliance and Oz had the technology to create mobile suits.
Lieutenant, leave him to us.
Do it.
God, I love how brassy these 90s anime soundtracks were.
Oh, yeah. Actually, special shout out to the composer of the soundtrack. That's Cal Otani, still with us. He's worked on more than just anime.
I know his name.
He worked on, he worked on the late 90s Godzilla and Gamera films, which this definitely has the feel of those too. And most famously, I think, in his video game work is he did Shadow of the Colossus.
That's where I know him from. Yeah, great soundtrack.
Yeah, Gundam Wing has some of my absolute favorite battle soundtracks because it's like something out of a video game. You're just enjoying it,
It sounds like a boss fight started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as the fight begins, Hero's not good. Like, he actually fucks up a lot in this. For being a highly trained, like, super soldier who can kick ass outside of a Gundam, he fails with his Gundam a lot. And he basically just has to count on that the Gundam Wing is nigh indestructible at the start of this series.
Shout out to my coworker, Mike Williams, who did a big animated GIF thread where he was pointing out all the ways in which Hero is actually pretty incompetent.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been reading that, although I have no context for why, but I've been enjoying what we see that one animated GIF all the time of him laying face down like in a stream.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Is that Hero in that image?
Hero,
okay,
yeah.
I love that. It's like the face down Pinocchio GIF.
No, Hero is really bad at using Gundams up until near the end of the series, I think. And I mean, I think it also, one of the most stirring images in the opening is the last shot of like the wing gets fucked up in the opening. Like its arm gets cut off and it's like doing one last desperate shot of the Buster Cannon as it falls to Earth. Like it's from the beginning, they knew in the OP, like, oh yeah, the Gundam Wing gets beat up a shitload in this show.
It's like, good job, Hero. You broke your Gundam in the first dang episode.
These weirdo scientists trusted you, Hero, and here you're fucking up already.
Dr. J trusted you, man.
By the way, we're not seeing them in this episode, but I love all those scientists. Like, they all look like straight out of a like Tezuka or Cyborg 009 kind of
They
series.
look like they should be in Mega Man.
Yeah. Well, as we know, Mega Man's just a ripoff of Astro Boy.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that makes sense.
and yeah, there's just some lines here that are very, I feel like early localization choices, like where Zex goes, he's intense, perhaps. And like, I get why he said perhaps, but it just kind of hangs there, that the statement of it. I think a better localization would have been like, could it be?
Yeah, I noticed, I mean, we are now, 20 years away from this localization. I don't think it's that good. Maybe the original script isn't that great, although
The original script isn't that great.
Yeah, I guess we would need someone who like understands Japanese so they can get like the pure information and not like a written translation or a dub. But it feels like the dub, it doesn't convey information that well. I had to rewind a few times, be like, okay, what is he saying now? Like things are. I think we've come a long way, and who knows the amount of time or money they had to put this together.
So I'm not fluent, so take my words with a grain of salt. But I've observed over the years that there's a lot of very boilerplate writing in Gundam, which is basically like, he's fast. That was definitely a Gundam, that kind of thing. And it's tough to translate that into a really interesting localization.
Yeah. I think even his like, I only rewatched a couple scenes in this in the subtitled version, but like I believe in perhaps he instead goes like almost shiroi, like it's
interesting.
Yes, yeah. But he says it with more passion though. Like he's like interesting instead of like perhaps. So
one of the reasons that I prefer watching it in the original Japanese is that in general they get better known and better paid actors to play these characters. It's a fairly like prestigious show to be on in terms of anime. So their performances are generally better.
I don't want to dump on our beloved Vancouver acting legends though. Like they're
doing the best they can with what they've got.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, I have one clip a little later that really is a lot of fun.
I love that guy. God bless him.
We'll get to him. But we do get to see as the two Ares units go after him. We see the power of the wings cannon, which is so cool. I love that it's just this like giant like Shinku Hadoken, pretty much. Just this giant wave that incinerates them. And even in the censored version, they were straight up like, these guys are dead. They exploded in their mobile suits.
It's like a wave motion gun that he's just carrying around portably. If you don't mind me making one more observation about the actual battle.
Yes.
One of the things about Gundam Wing is that the battles are actually pretty boring. A lot of the times the Gundams are just wrecking wave after wave after wave of Leo, or they're in kind of a rock'em sock'em battle with, another Gundam. And they're not as visually interesting as a lot of the other shows. But in this case, I would say that the battle to open the show is one of the more visually interesting kind of set pieces that they set up.
Mm-hmm.
I like that Zex knows the ins and outs of Gundam combat or mobile suit combat and why it's different from a regular fight. And one of those is that he doesn't need to defeat this robot. And in fact, his goal is to collect this mobile suit. But he does know he can just like tie it up and just like, especially in the drawing where his Leo meets the wing, he like wraps his leg around it almost like in an MMA style of like, it's called grapevining.
Okay.
Of wrapping the leg around it.
And Zex doesn't care about, sacrificing one of his to get that Gundam.
These Leo units are worth nothing, even though some people care about resources.
Exactly. Oh, man, that guy, he's fired up.
Well, he found his Leo for $5.99 in the bargain bin. Nobody else wanted it. Whatever.
I have to say, I should have said this up front. This episode could do storytelling a lot better, I think. But as a first episode, there are like so many hooks, almost too many hooks, where it's like, here's all these characters, here's the world, this guy's got a secret plan. Oh, who is this character? Oh my God, a secret weapon. Just like constant new information. So in terms of, trying to, take everything in, it's a lot. But for a first time viewer, you're like, I want answers to all of these questions. I want to see more of all of these characters. I want to know what the secret plot is. There's a lot to sink your teeth into with this first episode.
It's definitely not boring. It definitely does not start out slowly, which is why I imagine that it managed to hook in a lot of people pretty much immediately.
And we find out as the fight is nearing its end in this opening here, why Gundams are called such in this universe.
We have a complete data analysis.
And?
Judging by the strength of the mobile suit, it could only be made from Gundanium alloy.
So then, that was a Gundam. The mobile suit might be undamaged, but that reckless pilot won't have survived.
Lieutenant, the Marina mothership is offering to bring up the unregistered mobile suit.
Let them do as they wish. Tell them it sank in the JAP point of the Asia area.
Yes, sir.
They offered to bring it up? Ha! There's no bright future for soldiers scurrying for their reward.
Oh, come on. They're just trying to help you, buddy.
No bright future for soldiers scurrying for their reward. Like, he chews in that word reward.
I think I found Gundanium in the mines of Stardew Valley once.
It gave me such a laugh to hear Gundanium alloy. Gundanium.
Well, it's better than Gundam Seed trying to turn Gundam into an acronym.
Oh yes,
Oh.
yeah, I forgot. That's pretty ridiculous. More than Gundanium, which is, I mean, Gundanium's better than Unobtainium, I think. Or
Oh, for sure. I mean, so Gundam 1, James Cameron 0.
or I'm so used to it as a Marvel Comics fan that adamantium just sounds normal to me. Like, yes, the strongest metal there is on Earth, adamantium, but it's like, yeah, it's adamant.
Right.
Like it can't be stopped.
But if it was Wolveranium, you'd probably be like, that's stupid.
That would be pretty
Yeah.
dumb, yes. Like, it's hit the Loganium mines. But the Gundanium also is how they get away with, like, these things are kind of, it's why Leos are such total losers, because they can't do shit to Gundanium. Like, it gets
But
blasted.
one of the problems with this show is that the Gundams, even though they get beaten up a lot, they also feel almost nigh on invincible. I guess the original Gundam was also practically invincible and could beat up mooks a lot. But I guess my favorite Gundam fights are the ones where it feels like there's genuine danger, that a single mook can come in and seriously mess them up with like really good tactics. I think that's like really best exemplified in some of the more grounded, down-to-earth shows like Gundam Unicorn or whatever. But in Gundam Wing, it's like completely the opposite of that, where the Gundams are just there to look really cool and have insanely powerful weapons. And the only reason they fail is because their pilots are incompetent.
Well, I mean, they are children. They're 15.
Yes, the true flaw of the Gundam is pride.
Well, those wings, the wing is not strong enough to fly to that sun. You know what I'm trying to say here.
Icarus.
Tro was always out of ammo.
Kid Icarus.
I know that Tro, like, I don't know, that Gundam, heavy arms, I love heavy arms, but it should come with a gigantic backpack at all times.
It fires all of its bullets at once out of 40 guns. It's a problem.
Then we get to the commercial break. We get an eye catch, which honestly could be better. It's just like, here's all the character models or their 8x10 glossies, and that's it. And it's
So the best Gundam eye catch ever was in Victory Gundam, which was actually telling a story of the little Haro steadily growing and growing and growing and growing until while a dog looks on in horror.
This show does lack a Haro, as far as I recall.
It's fine. We don't need Haros.
But what are the kids supposed to buy? Like, sometimes model kits are too confusing for kids.
And sharp. Choking hazards everywhere.
But yeah, we come back from the break, and that's where Relina is hanging out with her dad. He's very famous, and she's kind of jealous. I think they're trying to put a little bit of an Electra complex on her, that she wants her daddy all to herself, and she doesn't like sharing him with the world. Though it seems once he's taken away in a car, it seems very dangerous that she's just like, oh yeah, I can find my way home. It's like, you're the very famous daughter of a political figure. You probably shouldn't walk home by yourself.
She's a spunky free spirit.
And also they write her as kind of childish, because she's like, it's my birthday, you should be hanging out with me, which that, when you're 16, that means a lot to a little kid, or to a teen. Then in a very like romance novel, dating sim game kind of way, Relina finds Hero washed up on the shore, who he was assumed dead, so Zex didn't see him escape. And then we get to see the very old school introduction of Treze, as such a fancy villain. He's at the opera.
He's taking video meetings, like Zoom meetings at the opera.
I also had to laugh at, like, in this futuristic show, they imagined like an SD television is how you'd get a video phone call. And it's also on the close-up of Treze where you see his like crazy eyebrows. It's where it really hit me like, oh, these character designs the men especially just have insane eyebrows.
Everybody loves Treze, even though he's the villain.
And I double-checked this on the wiki. You know, the very mature boss Treze, he's 24.
Oh,
he's
I figured.
24 years
Oh, my
old.
God.
Dude looks like he's 35. Come on.
Yeah.
Ready to retire.
He gets a call from Zex.
You're saying that 3 of your mobile suits were shot down?
Yes, sir.
It's unlike you to be so careless. It will be quite an effort to try and calm down the Alliance big shots.
We were up against a mobile suit made of Gundanium.
You're joking.
It's true. Just imagine if it was made by the colonies.
Something like this would never have happened if you and I had been here in Oz 15 years ago. That much is for certain.
Gundams are on Earth.
Can't imagine otherwise. Alliance's surveillance was far from being sufficient.
The Alliance's marina is on their way to gather the evidence.
All right, leave that business to my men. I'll send in my specialists on undersea searches, and then you can take it from there, Zex.
Right.
I'm sure you're aware, but this is an important period. Do not do anything that would anger the Alliance.
I fully understand.
On this broadcast, like they could easily be tapped. He's like, remember, we have a secret plan. Don't do anything crazy.
Don't mention our secret plan.
and later, just his internal dialogue to himself of like, my plan is great and I will soon do it. Also, he says like 15 years ago, it's like when you were 9. Is that why you wished you were there? Then, yes, he meets with the council in a scene straight out of the 1977 Star Wars of just the cool villain talking to the shittier villains who are just worried about how long it takes to build the Death Star.
Did you get the clip of the guy's crazy voice?
Oh, yes.
I gotta hear this.
Yeah.
It got even crazier as he kept giving lines. I love it.
Your point being?
You wasted 3 mobile suits just to bring a minor rebellion under control?
And as a result, we were able to prevent the rebellion from developing into anything.
I'm not talking about the results! You're abusing the Alliance military's valuable combat resources!
Valuable combat resources? Are you talking about our soldiers, or are you talking about mobile suits?
Are you making fun of me, damn it?
Calm down. Colonel Trace, it could happen again. Be careful the next time.
Yes, sir.
That guy is like transforming into a lizard man into the scene towards the end.
Are you making fun of me?
Oh God, those are some of my favorite voices, and especially Ocean Group dubs, because this episode has like probably 18 different voice characters, dozens of voice characters they have to do, but they only have so many actors, and so
it feels like, okay, your voice is really recognizable because you play a main character. Do the craziest voice imaginable and voice this character.
This guy only has 5 lines, so just do it. He's like, okay, I'm so mad.
It reminds me of the dubbed version of Evangelion, the first time you see the Seal console.
Yeah.
And everybody has just completely wild, insane voices as well. And I remember watching Evangelion on videotape in like 1999 or whatever, and just being charmed by how over the top the voice acting was. And
One of them
I imagine that a lot of people were sucked into Gundam Wing for that reason.
One of them sounded like Crankor from Prince of Space.
Yes.
Was it Prince of Space?
Yeah,
or okay.
Prince of Space.
Yeah.
You scum. It's been a dubbing practice for so long.
Everyone can do that voice.
Yeah.
So just do it for one minor character.
Also, talking about the tighter budget on this, like you mentioned, Kat, this was the one where it really struck me, where it's like, after that guy says, resources, it's then just a static overhead shot for like 30 seconds as the conversation continues. Which, you know, if I'm on a budget for this episode, I'm like, these are all one-off military tribunal dudes we're never going to see again. Why focus on any of them?
And the transformations and the robot stuff is really cool and all hand-drawn, too.
Yeah.
So they spend a lot of money on that.
I think this guy who says resources, or a dude like him, is the one who gets the incredibly cool assassination. The way he gets assassinated, he gets dropped out of the back of a plane, and you think he's done then, but then his killer shoots him through the head as he falls in space. It's
Lady
really
Un, she's awesome.
Yeah,
That's quite a shot.
It's she's badass until
it's like she's already falling out of the plane, and you just got to shoot him in the head too. I mean, it's moments like that just got memed constantly. It felt like in the late 90s, early 2000s as just an example of why people loved Gundam Wing so much, because it was so ridiculous.
I also, speaking of her, she's not in this episode. I love in a later episode when she's undercover and gets flirty with that guy that she eventually does fall in love with. I love she like takes his glasses off and then lines them up with her eyes, and the guy like blushes like that. That was like a really cute moment. I like that one.
Do you like evil hair up, Lady Un, or no glasses, she's all that hair down, Lady Un?
Hair down. I like her.
I'm totally hair up, glasses.
But what she's given, like, 90s anime schizophrenia, right? Isn't
Yes.
she? Yes.
She has like multiple personalities.
Well, that's the only way they can get away with her getting a face turn when she is so like sociopathic earlier in the show.
And her reasons for her face turn, like even when they explain that she has multiple personalities and what's going on with that, it's still, the explanation still makes no freaking sense.
But we cut back to Earth, and straight out of a dating sim, we get our first meeting between our heroine and her enigmatic love interest.
He's still just a young boy. Don't try to move. The ambulance is almost here.
Did you see?
See what?
They're down there!
Hurry! Hey, who are you?
What?
Hey, stop!
My name is Relina Dorlin. What's yours?
She is one spooky chick.
That's so weird.
That scene, is he trying to activate some kind of suicide device? That's what I thought it was. He's just like, well, time to kill myself.
Yeah.
This is a failure.
I believe that was his self-destruct, but it malfunctioned.
Yeah,
so.
I was like, that's dark.
But also,
I just want to point out that in the original Japanese, she says watakushiwa, which is like the royal we.
She's fancy. Yeah.
Like uber fancy. Like the point is that she's being, I think, hyper formal.
She's being
to the
very
point
formal,
of being
yeah.
completely ridiculous. And it's supposed to highlight just how sheltered she actually is.
That doesn't come through in the localization, though. Instead, she just sounds like she's kind of like just shell-shocked or whatever.
Yeah. And this, they gloss over a lot of details, but it's unclear how this man is able to assault 3 like medical workers, steal an ambulance, and then just show up at a school with no no manhunt or anything.
He's a really great secret agent.
I guess maybe did they explain like how he got like enrolled or anything?
In the second episode.
Yeah, I figured. I was like,
yeah.
boy, there should be a manhunt for Hero.
And also that he just shows up using his code name as his school name too.
Yeah.
He's like being a total badass, though. He like karate kicks a couple of ambulance workers, kicks in the window, shoves the guy out, and he's like, "Okay, now this is hyper competent hero. Here we go."
Yeah, the animation's really cool though too. When he like swings both feet into the passenger window of the ambulance to break into it, and the camera's like in the ambulance, and we're seeing it from that perspective. It's real neat.
Though if I can dump on Hero some more, it's like he does look badass, but he's basically beating up nurses, not like soldiers.
That's true.
So
what a dick.
they're like, "Hey, we're about to help you out. You karate kicked me in the face. I fell 20 feet. I broke my neck."
Well, they can at least help fix each other, right?
That's true.
They're all skilled.
And yeah, Relina, like she just did the right thing of calling the doctors, but Hero's being a dick too. He's like, "Did you see? I gotta get out of here." Like, also, like if his self-destruct thing hadn't malfunctioned, would she have been blown up too in that? Like, would she have also died? It's again,
She would have been covered in gore.
You're right, yeah. And in the next episode, he points a gun at her, like to her face. Like he's an intense dude. But yes, there's just a little bit of time in the episode, but we do get to meet the 4 other boys, starting with numbers 2 and 3.
This is Duo here. I've destroyed the main monitor. Now I just have to slice my way out of this battle.
This is the Dover base reporting. We're under sudden enemy attack.
Sudden enemy attack? Who's attacking?
I don't know.
Now that you've seen me, I can't let you live. My secret mission was to destroy only the spaceport. Now I'll destroy everything. This is Battle 001. Pilot's name, Troa, for the record.
For the record.
Wow, is that what the dub sounds like? Oh my god, I could not handle that.
This is the
seriously.
version that people are familiar with.
This is
the
what everyone
most.
loves. Yeah.
I guess I'm just really used to like Duo and Troa and all of them sounding a particular way, and I'm really sorry for being a total snob about this, but geez Louise, oh, it's so bad.
I usually am a snob too, but this dub is warm nostalgia for me. I'm really glad they didn't get professional current localizers to redo this.
I mean,
honestly.
this dub is nostalgic because nothing is dubbed like this anymore.
Yeah,
with these actors are like in this style.
Though then
What
again,
are they recording in a tin can? Jeez.
they had the best
finest equipment Vancouver could offer at the time.
I just want to point out that this is like actually one of my favorite bits of the opening episode because it's a very high energy montage that introduces all of the characters in a really fun, proactive way. It has that super awesome like Gundam Wing 90s music. You're like, all right, I'm into it. Yeah.
in this next clip, we get to meet the softest of the boys.
Who are they? Captain! What on earth?
Give up your weapons and surrender, and I'll spare your lives.
Fire! Fire!
Catcher reporting. I've destroyed the leader. Told you. You should have surrendered.
Aw.
They have a woman playing Katra in the original Japanese version. So he has a very high pitched and cute voice.
That makes more sense.
He's a little cutie. Again, that was he was my favorite when it was age appropriate for me. He was my favorite of the boys.
Very popular character in America, not so popular in Japan, actually.
Oh man, I think a lot of us came to this show in America with an American boy band view of the character.
I was thinking boy band when I was watching this show.
Yeah, which J-pop was ahead of us on that boy band style too, or they were doing it at the same time. But yeah, each of the boys is made in such a specific way that it's to attract you with a certain like, oh, I like the cute one, I like the shy one, I like the quiet one.
There's no old one though, like in Sync.
I guess that's Zex. I guess Zex is the Joey Fatone of the group. But I do want to especially say, like, Scott McNeil just rules his duo.
Mm-hmm.
He really plays up some things. There's so many great clips of him I found out there. Like, on YouTube, there's multiple videos of just people going to his signing line in anime cons and like saying, "Could you say this silly line that Duo did?" Like, there's in episode, I believe it's episode 20, he does a no that is just this screeching crazy no that he's asked to redo many times.
Oh my God, pay the man.
Actually, he had this other great line where he's just like, if you're joking, that's bad. If you're being sarcastic, that's even worse. Or I have another of my favorites actually right here of a classic Duo clip.
It'd take a miracle for you, but I can handle it.
Well, excuse me for being a mere mortal.
If you screw up, you'll be blown to smithereens. Your missions have no room for failure, just like mine. Who are you anyway?
I just love he even compares him to Evil Knievel in one of the lines, which is just like, well, that's a localization no, but it's very funny that he
so
says
Evil Knievel exists in the Gundam world.
Yes, yeah. See what you're missing out on not hearing this dub, Kat?
Okay, whatever you say.
I think the leader of that Leo squad was also Nappa, by the way. He sounded just like Nappa from DBZ.
Yeah.
But yes, then we get one more of them. We get to meet everybody's favorite sexist Wu Fei.
My name's Wu Fei. I'm not hiding anywhere. This battle will be over in practically no time.
Haven't the search troops arrived yet? They say they won't be here for 2 hours. What's taking them so long? Don't get so flustered. That Gundam's not gonna go anywhere. And don't forget it's quite deep here. It's natural that the Marina's search would take quite a long time to complete. But why don't I show you something interesting? What's this? An Oz observation craft took these pictures. Don't you think it looks an awful lot like the one we saw?
You mean there are 2 of these things?
No, there appear to be even more than that. There are reports that a mobile suit factory held by Oz, a spaceport, and troops searching for a capsule much like ourselves all came under attack and have been completely annihilated.
So there are 4?
5 altogether if you include the one that already sank.
5 of them? There are 5 Gundams?
Consider ourselves fortunate, because we made it out alive after an encounter with a Gundam.
I think these guys want to spend a day with Zex contest or something. They're
Well,
so...
wasn't he talking about earlier about how there were multiple Gundams or multiple units coming down, and now they're all surprised that there are multiple attacks happening?
And there's like this type of thing. Look, I have pictures now. See?
I only see 1, so that means 2. No, there's 4 of them. There's 4 others seen. Oh, so there's 4. Well, there's 5 with the one we fought. Remember, like, yeah, 5 Gundams.
Listen, things can exist if you don't see them.
No, I also feel like that 5 Gundam speech should be followed with Zex going like, I can't wait to follow all their cool adventures. 5 Gundams. So
is he so pompous he gets the 2 stupidest guys to be on his team to be like, now I'll know more than them no matter what?
Yeah, you know what? I guess he can count on those guys not to conspire against him because they seemingly can't even tie their shoes. But oh man, yeah, that whole sequence is great, and yes, Wu Fei, he kind of has like the overcompensating Asuka type vibe. Like he's like, oh, I'm so skilled and I don't need anybody's help, and you know, not unlike Asuka, when he fails, it kind of breaks him, and he needs to reform himself.
He spends like 5 episodes sulking because he lost in a sword fight.
Yeah. Well, it's not as cool as joining a circus. Like, now that's cool. But
you know that Trowa's Heavy Arms was originally supposed to be like a clown Gundam?
Oh, God.
Wow.
Oof. Well, I'm glad
and the
that
designer was like, yeah, I was kind of in a G Gundam mindset still. I'm kind of glad I didn't go that way. But if you are playing Super Robot Wars, there's an animation sequence where if you get the dynamic kill, you see Trowa's clown mask like hit the ground as kind of a dynamic finish shot.
That's a cool reference.
That's cool. Yeah. I like that. I guess though, you know, the orange, red, and white coloring is kind of clownish now that you mention it. Of
I prefer
Arms.
the blue one of Endless Waltz.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, look, we know you're an Endless Waltz fan.
I'm an Endless Waltz stan. What can I say?
But yeah, so after all this setup for the other Gundams, we finish off the episode heading to the very Euro flavored fancy school. I did see on the dub they even refer to Relina with Sama as the honorific, so that's how fancy they are there.
She arrives in her like pink limo.
Yes, yeah. Though, man, also talk about weird localization choices. Like the dialogue of the classmates is so slow. There's like tons of pauses. Like, oh, did you hear Relina's back? Yeah, that's right. And it's cool she's back from space. It's her birthday. Of too many
There's
pauses.
a carbon monoxide leak at the school.
Hard Left Turn into a shoujo anime Victorian Academy or 18th century France Academy.
Did they spend a lot of time in the school in the series?
I think I think they're done with it by 10 episodes.
I was wondering if they're like writing a school into it to make it more like approachable, you know, like have school antics on top of Gundam antics.
This would be a trick that you're going to get school antics on the show. Though, you know, I pitched to Bandai Namco an Otome game that's just set at the school and all 5 boys go there and you pick which one you want to date.
But how have they not done this yet?
Right? I don't
mean,
understand.
it's such an obvious, oh my God. Wow, I'm mad that it's not happened yet.
I think Namco's just not in the Otome business, and they didn't partner with anybody to do it. You know, Namco knows how to make boy games. They don't know how to make girl games.
They're too busy making freaking Gundam build fighters.
I'm gonna pitch the first Western-made Otome game for Gundam. I can get meetings now, but yes, the episode ends with Hero's introduced to his class. Relina tries to say hello, and he just gives her the cold shoulder, which I think this show definitely subscribes to the idea that girls love a distant bad boy. I think that's the trope the all male writing staff is indulging in here. And yes, then comes the birthday invitation, the incredibly memorable ending to this episode that I'm just going to play out in full here.
It's an invitation to my birthday tomorrow. I hope you'll be able to make it to the party.
kill you.
Yeah.
What kind of person is he?
I can't wait to find out.
The wind sells it.
Oh man, I love the very interesting formalist shot of them standing under spotlights after it happens, and then the wind blows. But I just kept thinking, "Here you are, Nelson."
I also love when he rips it in half. It's like to the camera, and it flies in half in the camera.
Very good animation of that.
I think it's the best like drawing in the episode.
And he like walks past her and like wipes a tear off, and she was like, "Oh, it was a bit." She would like kind of smiles, and he's like, "No, I'll kill you."
Yeah, it's not.
It's my single favorite shot in the entirety of Gundam Wing by far. It encapsulates everything about how insane this show is. And so over the top, so stylized, so wonderful when Hero's walking past her and he's like, Oriwa Koros.
Yes,
and it's this very deadpan, very extremely serious thing. And then she's just looking at him like, okay, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
I am really hot for you now, Hero.
Yeah, she's all shadowed and like super. I think she is turned on by this exchange, especially like the little smile she gives when he wipes the tears. She's like, "Oh, it's okay." And then
so wiping the tear makes it too. My God.
Yeah, they rewatching it. I rewatched the final episode for this, and there's a really good callback to the tearing of the invitation in the very last scene of the show. They knew how stirring it was even then. And now it's been a meme ever since. It's also funny in the next episode. It's about characters being mad that he rejected it, and it's almost like their high school anime characters like, "Hey, it's time to have a fun high school anime story," and he's like, "Shut the fuck up! I'm not doing this.
We're at war."
Yeah, there's a fencing scene that is fully a reference to the classic fencing fight between Amuro and Char, including like one of the swords broken in half and then shoved through a guy's mask. Like it's really cool. But yes, that's where the episode ends. It's a crazy ass ending that really does make you want to stick with it. And yes, the ending theme is "It's Just Love" with the apostrophe in the wrong place. But look, hey, it's fine. By Onishi Rumi is the singer of that. So it's and again, that's the ending in the last episode too. So after a big dramatic ending, it then just still plays out when it's like, you guys should have had a second ending, I think.
Jungle fun.
Especially because Relina is in a completely different place by the time the series ends, but then they cut to her childish jungle fun. That is a really fun episode. I'm glad we did the first episode because it let us end with the tearing of the birthday invitation. Everybody's favorite moment from the series, I think.
And it's very, very available. So if you got interested in this show through this podcast, you can just watch it all now.
Yeah, sub and dub. It's all there on sub and dub together are available on Hulu. Crunchyroll, I think, is just sub, maybe dub too. But I watched on Hulu, but it's very available. Or if you want to spend $100 on having it on Blu-ray, you can buy the 2 Blu-ray collections of the 49 episode series as well.
I think it's pretty much a perfect first episode for Gundam Wing. It has just the right amount of action. It establishes the stakes. It introduces you to all of the characters. It has a lot of iconic scenes. It has a great hook at the end. I think so many Gundam shows start out extremely slowly. Like if you just look at Zeta Gundam, which just feels like it takes frickin' forever to get going, and some other shows as well. So to have this super high energy, action-packed first episode is a really nice turn for Gundam Wing. And whenever I watch a show like this particular episode, I'm like, oh man, I should just watch Gundam Wing again. No, I don't want to actually watch Gundam Wing again, but it really highlights why I still have very kind of warm feelings toward it, even though I didn't have the Toonami nostalgia. And in general, like I think the UC series is way the heck better than Gundam Wing ever was, but it's one of a kind. It's definitely not boring.
It got a generation of people into Gundam for sure.
Yeah, I owe it that. And honestly, I have a lot of friends who were really active in the kind of the Gundam Wing fan fiction community. And, they would have never watched Gundam if not for Gundam Wing. And so I really kind of appreciated that it got a whole kind of generation of women into anime.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kat, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of What a Cartoon. Please plug yourself. Tell us where to find you on Twitter and talk about your podcast as well.
Hi, I'm Kat Bailey. I'm on Twitter at @the_Catbot, where you can see occasionally my Gundam takes. And also I talk about video games, not so much sports right now. And also I host a podcast called Axe of the Blood God for my website, my day job, US Gamer. This episode's coming out in like May or something, so we'll be way past Final Fantasy VII Remake chatter, but make sure to go check out my review and all of my discussions about that on the show, as well as our console RPG quests, in which we take a nostalgic look back on the RPG libraries of the various consoles through the years. I think What a Cartoon listeners would definitely appreciate those.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming back, Kat. We always love to have you. What's the next Gundam you want to do after this?
Man.
I think
that's a hard
0080.
one.
Yeah.
I think we should probably go back to UC and maybe do Gundam 0080 or 8th MS Team.
Yeah, I think.
8th MS Team. Yes, I'm down.
But thank you so much for coming back.
Happy to be here.
So thanks so much to Kat Bailey for being on this podcast. Please check out all of her stuff. As for us, if you want to support our stuff and get all of our podcasts 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, please go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And if you sign up there for $5 a month, you'll get just that, but also access to everything behind our $5 paywall. That includes all of our limited miniseries, the most recent of which that we're going through right now is Talking Mission Hill. That's only available on the Patreon. We're going through all of Mission Hill via the Talking Simpsons style. We've also done things like Talking of the Hill, Talking Futurama, and Talking Critic, all at the $5 level. So at that level, we have over 100 bonus podcasts at this point in the almost 3 years we've been doing the Patreon. And the only way to access them is to sign up for $5 a month at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. And Henry, can you please tell everybody out there what's happening at the $10 level? One extra long podcast every month that's voted on by patrons.
That's right. For our premium patrons out there, we do a What a Cartoon movie podcast once every month. And you guys on the regular feed of What a Cartoon get to hear the preview of it. But if you want to hear the often over 4 hours long conversations about a different animated feature film, you got to sign up at $10 a month at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Our most recent one, the Lupin III film Castle of Cagliostro, the first movie directed solely by Hayao Miyazaki. It's a great film, and we had a great time talking about it. So you're going to want to listen to that and the over 60 hours of previous What a Cartoon movie content. So please consider upping your pledge to $10 a month at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
So I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. I have another podcast, by the way. It's called Retronauts. That is a classic gaming podcast. Check it out wherever you find podcasts, or go to patreon.com/Retronauts. If you sign up there for $5 a month, you'll get 2 episodes every month that won't be available on the free feed. Again, that is patreon.com/Retronauts for the Retronauts exclusive podcast. Henry, how about you?
Hey, you can follow me on Twitter at HENEREYG. That's where you're going to get all your fun Henry Gilbert updates. Plus, you should be following the Twitter account of this podcast network at Talk Simpsons Pod. Whenever new stuff happens on Talking Simpsons or What a Cartoon, you'll learn about it there with some fun tweets and retweets. So please follow that on Twitter at Talk Simpsons Pod.
Thanks so much for joining us, folks. We'll see you next week for the Duckman episode, Cocktails for 4, and we'll see you then.
The Alliance's Marina has sent out troops to find the sunken Gundam. But Oz's Zex was the first to find the Gundam using the Cancer mobile suit. Hiro must destroy the Gundam before anyone gets their hands on it. But
In the dark ocean depths, another Gundam shadow appears. Next, on Gundam Wing Episode 2, The Gundam Death Site.